So, this episode is gonna be all about the lizard brain and also how to change your habits and why certain habits are just so fucking difficult to cope with, first of all, and also then to change, and especially change. And this is gonna be the topic of the video. But more after the intro, as always. And with that being said, hello and welcome back to the next episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. And I'm actually very sorry that I'm so blue. I'm just seeing I'm actually pretty blue, but, before we even go through the episode or just talk about what I'm gonna talk about today, if you're having a look into the description, there is 2 links. The first link is for the notes. The notes are basically all the highlights that I'm having in the video. So you're then gonna see in the articles that I've searched up or also found that I'm having certain highlights. These highlights are going to be provided to you in a PDF, which is going to be linked down in the description. It is a download. If you're just watching this video just a year later or whatever, please just search for the date and then you're gonna find it. And or for the title. I'm always gonna include some bit of the title, but I guess since it is actually a Google Drive link, that you could also just be looking for something like the lizard brain, even it is not in the title, because I think that Google is actually scanning it, and also kind of seeing what is in the PDF and whatnot. So I really believe in that. And maybe even more important, also for the podcast listeners, there is also a link in the description also to a Google Drive page or folder or whatever, where you can add background music to the video, because I assume and I think that it would make the video way better, but I'm just kind of handicapping my post-production capabilities with or by adding some music to the video itself. Therefore, if you want to have some music, please check out the link, and there's going to be like 5 tracks or 6 different tracks with different kinds of music. It depends on what you like. So you basically are able to personalize the whole experience with the episode. But yeah, let's actually move into the episode, So, as you can see on the left side of the screen, I'm only having 1 article left, because we are on the Harvard Business Review site, and there you're also, or always and only having 3 articles or 3, I think it is actually articles. I think they are just counting it as articles. You have 3 articles if you haven't been subscribed or if you aren't subscribed to Harvard and or to the business review. So it actually costs something then. And this is a pretty nice article and a pretty amazing one. And it is called Getting to the Bottom of Destructive Behaviors by Ron Carucci. And Bon Carucci, I think it's actually or is it Carucci? I think it is actually Carucci, but I'm not quite sure. It should be Carucci if it is Italian. If it is not, it's gonna be something else, I don't know. And this one is, as I said before, is gonna be about just changing behaviors, and it is about the behaviors that are really difficult to change, because they're so deeply rooted in our brain that it is just really difficult to do something about them. But it just gives you I think it is a 4-step guide or something to changing these things, and not just to figuring out how you could actually change those things and see which things that you're actually telling yourself, what actually the story behind whatever you're making is. And it's incredibly interesting, but afterwards we're also going to go through something else. So let's see. Despite well-intentioned efforts, many of us struggle to maintain the new and improved versions of ourselves. Pressures and triggers can cause us to slide back into familiar, tough, unwanted behavior, or though unwanted behavior. Science tells us that change is such an incredible feat. It requires, or just because it requires, engaging 2 parts of our brain. The front of our brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, which is where cognition happens. It is the rational part of our brain that acquires new knowledge and skill. We use this when we are learning how to make a behavioral change. A separate part of the brain, often referred to as the reward system, provides us with motivation or the will to change by releasing dopamine when we do something that feels good. You think of this combination as the will and the way when routine efforts to learn new skills or form new habits fail. It is usually because they are only engaging one of these 2 areas. But the problem is, the fact is, that we need both of them. We need the rational one, and we also need the motivation to do something. And I've been then thinking about some not good behaviors, which is kind of low English, I know, but But I have actually noticed, yes, I'm having food in my face. I do not know what it's a root, but I don't actually know what it's called in English. Therefore, I'm just, no, never mind. The thing is, if you're talking about smoking is definitely about dopamine. You know, there's gonna be some dopamine involved or something, some other hormone that is gonna feel or let you feel good about whatever. I know it's just about the nicotine, you know, that is actually doing that or that is taking the spot of the dopamine there. I'm not quite sure how it is working there with being addicted to some things in general. I would say I'm not really knowledgeable in that space, but I think, yeah, it only engages one part because the rational one and the logical one and the one that is actually smart would actually say, no, the fuck, what are you doing? It would actually stop you from doing that. But, there is one engaged, and it is kind of the motivational one, I would say, or at least how I'm thinking about these things. So yeah, it is just fucked up. It is really fucked up. But the most change-resistant behaviors add another layer of complexity. They are often rooted into formative traumatic experiences that are stored as memories in our amygdala, however it is actually pronounced, I'm not quite sure about that. And the amygdala is also called the lizard brain, but we're going to talk about that later on. It's probably going to be a relatively long episode, I assume, but I'm not quite sure. This is the part of our brain that senses and triggers emotional responses to threats. While memories live in the past, when our amygdala detects danger in familiar situations, we reenact those experiences if they were in the present and respond with self-protective behaviors that can have damaging side effects. When this happens, neither the will, which is the motivation, or the way, which is the cognitive learning, are sufficient to drive change. So it is basically like a story that we are telling ourselves, something that happened to us, whether it is a trauma, whether it is something else that really formed our mind at this point in time. It's probably been something that's been in your childhood or something else. I think traumas in general, they really can change things because it is literally a story that has happened and that we keep telling ourselves, basically, because as we see, when something like this happens, and as they say as well, if something like this happens, we are reenacting the whole experience and we are acting according to it, as if it would actually be happening in the present. The funny thing now is, just because I'm thinking about it at this point of time, is that if you're thinking about that, by thinking and believing in some things, or by experiencing a certain situation, we think that a certain thing is right happening at this point of time, even though it is not, such an experience, such a traumatic experience. It is happening, or at least our mind thinks it is happening at this point of time, but it is not happening at this point of time. And I've been talking about one specific thing just really a lot, which is the fact that, if I remember it correctly, I'm not quite sure about that, so please take it with a grain of salt. If we think about some things, if we think about things, then our brain can't really decide whether something is a thought or something is reality. And I think it is somehow also correlated to that, not just in the way it is, not just about being traumatic and whatnot, but it is like the exact same system there. It is the brain, and the brain thinks it is actually the truth, it is not the truth, or it's reality, but it is not the reality. But we are still acting according to that, even though it is not even happening. Just our brain thinks that it is happening, even though it's not, or it is just seeing certain triggers maybe. As a first step, I aim to help them access the deeper narratives shaping their unwanted behaviors. It is an approach I call origin stories. By no means does this method replace long-term therapeutic work. Sometimes it reveals the need for it, but it does provide a safe space for leaders to examine the origins of persistent, damaging behaviors and build the awareness that is needed to at least set lasting change in motion. If you or someone you coach has struggled to change chronic destructive behavior, anything from angry outbursts, which is, by the way, something that I'm having because I'm a fucking aggressive person, to freezing up in high-risk moments, to asserting excessive control under stress. Uncovering the origin stories may help you break through and make way where other approaches have failed to. And something that I have to just now say is that I think we all are having some certain behaviors and some certain things that we are just doing, and we don't actually know why the fuck we are doing them. And I think that just these steps are probably also going to help with that, by just, first of all, seeing why we are doing certain things. Because, first of all, realizing that there is something, I think, is a really, really, really huge step. Thinking about something like that and just searching up something like that and looking for something like that so that you can actually help yourself is, at my point of view, the first step to actually doing something about it. The realization itself. But then understanding what actually is going on is also a pretty huge one, since, we know what's going on then. And if we know what's going on, we can just do something about it, which just makes sense, that we're then just able to do something about it if we know what it is all about. Yeah. So, the process involves 4 steps. The first one is write down the origin stories. It's actually origin stories. Recall scenes from their formative years, or recall scenes from your formative years, usually between the ages of 5 and 20, in which the importance of the behavior in question started to appear. The importance of the behavior in question started to appear. Which is, for me, as I'm just thinking about it, when did I start to be aggressive? Might have been just really, really back in 2001 when I was born, or just right after it or something. Clients frequently choose formative scenes involving pain and conflict, which tend to show up at the interception of their unwanted behaviors. Struggle to recall a scene, which is something that does not really often happen, but it is commonly a struggle to pick which one to write about. First, I know you can also do this multiple times, I guess. Multiple stories sometimes unveil patterns that show me how the destructive behavior has been reinforced throughout their lives, which is totally something that I think you can also kind of think about. If there are some stories, there's probably going to be certain elements that are just the same. And if you're just seeing certain patterns and if you're seeing certain things like that, then you're going to be like, well, this is the problem, because you're seeing it over and over and over again. Take the case of my client, Andy, the division president of a global accounting firm. He was affable, articulate, with an infectious energy that earned him high regard. But these positive qualities were counteracted by a defiant needs to be right, crave the spotlight and take increasingly. One interviewee told me, Andy's a great guy, but he'll never change. He can't listen if you just suggest he's wrong. He'll take non-stop or belittle you until you give in. During a 4-day intensive something, I asked Andy to write down stories from his formative years. Centered around times he learned that being both right about and central to so many issues became critically important to him. I wanted him to uncover why being wrong on the periphery was threatening to him. My hunch was that Andy only felt safe when he was talking, and that having his views questioned triggered a sense of inadequacy and shame. The question I told him to try and answer was this: when and how was this behavior learned? So, which is also something that you should maybe be asking yourself as well. And or if you just know somebody that is just really, really, really struggling with that, telling them or asking them this exact question or telling them that they should ask themselves this question would actually be a pretty amazing thing, I guess, for them, for their life, basically for them. It's amazing. So the second step is identify the inner narrative. The origins of destructive behaviors are almost always attached to well-formed narratives, which are just the stories that we are telling ourselves. The problem there is, did these stories really happen that way? Or are we just remembering them in this particular way? This is a really huge question, and I know that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the case, because we often tend to somehow change reality, at least in our mind and in our brain, to a certain degree. Not necessarily to the good, I would say, and not necessarily to the bad, I would say, even though I often kind of feel like it is more to the bad than to the good. But it's like, I don't know, like it depends, it just depends, I would say. And those serve as templates or biases with which we make sense of the world and often manifest in reaction to experiences we faced earlier in life. Unless we rewrite them, we spend our lives recreating conditions that reinforce them subconsciously, which is interesting. But we can't rewrite stories that we can't even name, and that's what this step is all about. One of the stories Andy wrote was about the social struggles of changing schools when he was 10. Andy was both a severe stutterer and suffered with ADHD. His new school required him to attend special education classes in the middle of the day when everyone else was at recess. For 2 years, Andy's daily walk of shame passed cheering peers with a J-E-E-R-I-N-G, peers to what they call this, or the stupid class room. Set the stage for a defiance and shame that would manifest as the behaviors he now couldn't change. Which is, I think, a good point to just say you shouldn't kind of trigger anybody, or you shouldn't say something to anybody, something fucked up. Of course it is about children there. When you're 10, you're not probably going to think about that unless your parents told you to, but it's fucked up, it's really fucked up and really easy to just really fuck up one's life quite incredibly just in a few steps, I would say. Like it's completely easy. Unfortunately. Though Andy's IQ was high, his disabilities made him demonstrating his intelligence on standardized tests impossible. Andy learned that to prevent being seen as stupid, he needed to be highly likable, articulate without stuttering, and consistently demonstrate how smart he was to others. To him, being smart meant being right. The narrative Andy wrote down was, unless you can prove otherwise, everyone will see how stupid you are. Those years of rationalized public shame caused him to conclude he was inadequate, unintelligent, and therefore had to adopt sophisticated behaviors to conceal that truth from others. But his abrasive behaviors ended up doing the opposite, pushing people away and replicating his childhood experiences of rejection. Consequently, he had to acquire others' acceptance and admiration using upbeat energy and brilliantly articulated ideas. And he realized he would spend his entire life perfecting a cycle that, while made him feel momentarily safe, yielded the very rejection he sought to escape. The third step, name the need the behavior is serving. This step is about figuring out what the need actually is. Why are we doing that? Why is the anchor, or what is the anchor that holds troubling behavior in place? And what need does it serve? What is it trying to do? Why are we doing something like just being angry, like I am? Why am I angry? What am I trying to do with that? Or what am I trying to do with being angry? How does it help me? Because most often it doesn't really help me. I'm only hurting my fucking self. In terms of I'm punching my fucking desk and it's not gonna be good. Even though I kind of have a feeling that it maybe is just strengthening my wrist bones and whatnot, but but never mind, really never mind. When I asked Andy to tell me what he ultimately wanted, he said, "I want to feel like I belong just by being me." The problem was that he learned early in life that he couldn't be both belong and just be me or just be him. As a result, he chose to concoct, which means prepare, make, put together and assemble a new version of himself. His unconscious need to reinforce his own belief that he was stupid and unlikable is what made him resistant to change, despite cognitively understanding he should in fact change. The problem, as we see now, despite cognitively understanding he should in fact change, which means even though his rational part of the brain knows that he should be changing, he's not doing that. Maybe it's just because of emotional ones there. Even though they say it's like, or he said it's just not gonna, or it's evolving another just layer of complexity. But yeah, the fourth step. Choose a new narrative and alternative behaviors. Once someone has identified the deeper needs that their troubling behavior serves, no matter how irrational they seem, they can begin the process of change. But it will take time. As so many good things just take a lot of fucking time. And I think it is just something that's pretty common that a lot of people are not really thinking about patience and are being patient. Unfortunately, just because a lot of things involve patience. Whether it is building a business, whether it is building a relationship, whether it is building new habits, it just takes a lot of fucking effort, first of all, and a lot of fucking time. And we need to be patient, which is something that I need to remind myself on so often. Might be also one of the reasons why I'm talking about it so often. Because I also tend to forget about it. Because I also tend to get impatient and be like, well, I've been doing this for more than a year now. Where are my fucking results? There are no results. But yeah, that's the story of my life, I guess. So what would happen if you really were smart and didn't need to purchase others' approval with your enthusiastic energy or by using your verbal mastery to appear intelligent? Do you think others would still admire you if you were quiet? Probably. And he says, for his new narrative, and he wrote, I am liked, smart and safe even in silence. The work of learning to embody that narrative will surely take him time, but the direction he needs to go is now clear and he's on his way. And I think it is actually kind of like, it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense that you're still going to be smart even though you're silent. It doesn't have anything to do with each and another. Only because you're silent doesn't mean that you're dumb. Only that you're just really loud and whatnot doesn't mean that you're smart, and or just also the other way around. It's like pretty fucked up and it just really makes sense. And I mean, yeah, this is the brain, I guess. This is kind of the function that enabled us to, which is actually part of the other article that I found, which is like the function of the part of this, or a function from this brain, from this really primitive and old brain, so-called the lizard brain, just because it is also having, or a lizard brain is also having the exact same things, which just makes us pretty quick in certain situations. When something is falling down, grabbing it really quickly is going to be just something that some people are able to do, even though they're not thinking about it. They're not thinking about it, but still they're doing it, which is kind of the main thing this brain is doing, kinda, especially if it is about some situations where we are feared, where there's anxiety and all those things, which basically made us survive just really back in the days. But nowadays it's like pretty unnecessary and it's just fucking us up most often. Unfortunately, we are not really often in the place and really often in the position where we actually also need that brain, really fortunately. Maya Angelou said, said, "There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. If you're wrestling with persistent destructive behavior, perhaps it is time to excavate what untold story might be driving it. You will live a far more gratified life, and those you lead will be especially grateful." Hopefully, because you put a fucking work into it. A lot of fucking work. So, I've actually having 3 other articles, but it's gonna be a long episode, I assume. Maybe we just also go through this one. In 1954, the limbic cortex was described by neuroanatomists. Yeah, reading is a real power of mine, I know. It's the seat of emotion, addiction, mood, and lots of other mental and emotional processes. It is very primitive, and it is called the lizard brain because the limbic system is about all a lizard has for brain function, which is quite fucked up if you're thinking about it. The lizard is probably only gonna do some things that are gonna be like instinctive, I would say. Which is like probably enough for this just animal, I guess. It is in charge of fight, flight, feeding, fear, freezing up, and fornication. Which is actually quite a lot of things if you're thinking about it, but we're not actually using it, which is kind of, as I said before, like nowadays it's relatively unnecessary to have that part of the brain, even though I don't know if it is like, if you're just basically cutting out the limbic system, you're basically going to destroy everything. Of course you're going to probably destroy quite a lot of things because it's like the brain and it's very fragile and whatnot. But on the other hand, it's like, is there some interactions between all those brain areas? Which is something that I'm just not educated in, therefore I also don't know. While seeing a patient this morning, there was wonderment. Well, this is actually not that relevant. So I always tell patients who are in recovery that if they feel like they are emotionally in a groove, that it is likely they are in trouble. The groove is the uncomfortable place in your limbic brain that gets you into trouble. It is okay to experience the emptiness of life, the pain of the moment, and the discomfort of relationships. There is no need to anesthetize the discomfort. Working through this is the only path to grow and to growth and sobriety. So it's actually sober, and it's kind of the noun of sober, I would say, but I don't know how to pronounce it. So all the parts that you're gonna see that I'm also not going through are gonna be down in the PDF. So if you want to check out the PDF, this time is actually going to be even more detailed than the whole podcast, which is something interesting. And now actually getting to the lizard brain and or kind of the main mind behind the lizard brain, at least as how I have found it, which is Seth Godin. Once again, I'm talking about Seth Godin. I know I'm talking a lot about him, but yeah. And he's been talking about lizard brains just so fucking often, which is kind of one of the reasons why I'm just also willing to talk about it, because I believe that it is something that's pretty interesting and pretty also important. Therefore, yeah. So how can I explain the never-ending irrationality of human behavior? Which is like, as he says also there in the article, we say we want one thing and then we do another. We say we want to be successful, but we sabotage the job interview. We say we want a product to come to market, but we send back the shipping schedule. And all those things. These are all the part of the lizard brain. We are all doing some bullshit, probably partly or mainly because of the lizard brain. Or as Stephen Pressfield describes it, the resistance. The resistance is the voice in the back of our head telling us to back off, be careful, go slow, and compromise. The resistance is writer's block and putting jitters and every project that ever shipped late because people couldn't stay on the same page long enough to get something out the door. Why did the chicken cross the road? Because the lizard brain told her to, and then it was probably dead, because it was driven over. Is this how you say it? I don't even know. The amygdala isn't going away. Your lizard brain is here to stay. The thing is, we can deal with it. And we can just be like, well, I'm gonna change some things and fuck off, you motherfucking lizard brain. We can just say something like that to our lizard brain. If it is necessarily gonna be just something that's gonna work if you're just talking to your lizard brain, I don't know. Probably not. Kinda. But on the other hand, it is like, we just have to be able to cope with it and deal with it and communicate with it and just using it in all the ways it is meant to be used for, so in all the good ways, and just not let it work when it is just doing some bullshit, I guess. And there's another article, which is going to be the last one for today, and it is also a pretty good one. Actually also a relatively long one though, where the instincts that warn us of danger when it lurks reside, Actually, this lizard brain is a metaphor for the amygdala, the part of the limbic system which is responsible for processing our emotions. It allows us to react to a threat in an immediate and automatic way without the rest of the brain processing information, thus gaining a split second that has allowed our survival for millions of years, as I've been talking about it before. Stephen Pressfield calls the phenomenon resistance. In his book Do the Work, resistance is an active, intelligent, protein, malignant force, tireless, relentless, and inextinguishable, whose sole object is to stop us from becoming our best selves and from achieving our higher goals. You keep postponing a task, which is like a way to see if the lizard brain is like fucking with you. You keep postponing a task or a project. You're being too self-critic. You get obsessed so much over details that the results are never good enough for you, and you always find some excuses not to do something. Then use all the weapons at our disposal to combat resistance, which is do not judge yourself, accept all ideas, stop making mistakes, have lots of ideas, and don't be like, well, these ideas are fucked up. Good and bad, logical and irrational, and catch them all. To begin with, you do not know the potential of an idea. We don't know, we don't know. We shouldn't judge it. We really shouldn't fucking judge it, We really shouldn't. Act first, think later. Act and reflect and repeat the process. A work in progress generates a magnetic field that grabs you and pushes you to continue working. Do not be afraid to fail. Failure is just another way to learn. The real failure is not trying. Not trying. Really important. The real failure is not trying. This is failure. Failure, like, okay, I failed. It's not failure. Failure is not trying. If all else fails, remember how the idea was born. What is the reason you wanted to do that? How much do you want it? If there is a passion or commitment or not a really important reason behind all this, you're probably wasting your time and you must leave. But if there is something really significant and important to you, remembering and acknowledging it will help you overcome your lizard brain, which is basically actually also something that I'm subconsciously always doing. I'm always like, why did I even start this? Why did I actually want to do this? And all those things, which in the end really helps me to do that. And here's now to just overcome that and still just keep going and whatnot. And then there's also the linchpin manifesto, because this part of it is actually from Seth Godin's linchpin. Are you indispensable? Indispensable. It's actually indispensable. I didn't actually know. I am an artist. I take initiative. I do the work and not the job. Without critics, there is no art. I am a linchpin and I'm easily replaced. If it's never been done before, even better. The work is personal, too important to phone in. The lizard brain is powerless in effect of arts or in the face of art if you make it happen every day. Every interaction is an opportunity to make a connection. The past is gone, it has no power. The future depends on choices I make now. I own the means of production, the system isn't as important as my contribution to it. I see the essential truth unclouded by worldview and that the truth drives my decisions. I lean into the work, not away from it. Trivial work doesn't require learning. Busy work is too easy, rule-breaking works better and is worth the effort. Energy is contagious, the more I put in, the more the world gives me. It doesn't matter if I'm always right, it matters that I am always moving. I raise the bar. I know yesterday's innovation is today's standard. I will not be brainwashed into believing in the status quo. Artists don't care about credit. We care about change. There's no resistance if I don't allow it to defeat me. I embrace a lack of structure to find a new path. I'm surprising and often surprised. I donate energy and risk to the cause and I turn charisma into leadership. The work matters. Go and make something happen. And with that being said, this is actually going to be the end of the episode. And I really have to thank you for being with me. I've really appreciated that. So if you have liked it as well, give me a like if you're on a YouTube video, or rate the podcast if you're on a podcast. And I would heavily appreciate if you would be subscribing to the podcast and or also to the YouTube channel. I really highly would. How many wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck woodchuck chuck? This is what I'm thinking. But yeah, I wish you the best health of happiness and also success, and I also hope that you're gonna remind yourself and you're gonna be remembered, which basically means your legacy, which basically means just being a nice person and also going to be remembered as a nice person. On the other hand, I'm also having 3 other questions for you. The first one is, why are you here? The second one is, what are you trying to change? The third one is, what is bothering you the most? These 3 questions are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even a business idea. With that being said, I'll hopefully see you the next time. Go and do something fucking great. I'll see you.